What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. Merry Christmas. We're here talking the Christmas Day slate. We have 3 games for DraftKings and FanDuel. We're going with core plays for it. But if you do enjoy today's video, make sure you like down below, subscribe to the channel for brand new. Let's dive right into it. And as always, if you like what you see on the screen behind me, it's available completely free for a week over on Patreon with the free week trials, projections for both sites, my optimizer, cheat sheet, Discord community, and much more. If you want to check it out, links down in the description or the pinned comment. Let's get into it here. We're going to start with the quarterbacks, and really a good quarterback slate for only having 3 games. 6 quarterbacks and 4 of them, all very good. Jalen Hurts gets the Giants, Patrick Mahomes gets the Raiders, Lamar Jackson gets the 49ers, and Brock Purdy gets the Ravens. Now, the night game for the Christmas slate is going to be the banger. 5.5 point spread in the 49ers' favor at home, 46.5 over under. We have Lamar Jackson facing off versus Brock Purdy. If you're holding any MVP tickets, this game could definitely dictate which way it's going to sway, because we know Lamar Jackson is right there in the running. Brock Purdy is currently the favorite, minus 200, depending on the book that you're looking at. They dropped this game at home to Baltimore, could end up swaying towards Lamar Jackson, so it's going to be kind of interesting to see how that plays out. But let's shift towards DFS purposes, and for that, Jalen Hurts looks like he's going to be the QB1 this week, projection-wise, ownership-wise, and really just draws a good spot versus the New York Giants. I don't think the Eagles will have any issues with them at home here in the 430 slot. 27-point implied team total, 11.5 point favorite, 42.5 over/under in this game. I would say the only downside here is that the Giants probably won't be able to push it too much, and the Eagles potentially could let off the gas a little bit, but overall I think the stacks are perfectly fine in this game. And the one thing we love about Jalen Hurts is the tush push. It's undefeated. If they get inside the 2-yard line, we are getting 6 automatic points from Jalen Hurts, because it's just what happens each and every single week. He's averaging 1 touchdown per game on the ground, 7 designed runs, 40 yards on the ground. It's not even including the scrambles. And he's got great weapons to get the ball to. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert's back, so I don't really see any downside with Jalen Hurts. The floor is safe. The ceiling is high. Matchup's kind of middle of the pack versus the New York Giants, but I think the Eagles need a nice statement win after that bad loss versus the Seattle Seahawks. Patrick Mahomes, $7,700. Definitely has not been his usual self this year. Now, I think a lot of that's just due to the weak receiving core, but Rashee Rice has definitely elevated himself. He looks like a nice number 1 option for him. You obviously still have Travis Kelce. Not really too concerned here versus the Las Vegas Raiders. It's just another ugly team that they're facing at home. Kind of the exact same situation versus Philly, because I don't think the Raiders are going to put up too much of a fight, but they still have nice weapons over there in Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. It's just quarterback play is obviously not the best. Now, if you were watching that primetime game versus the Los Angeles Chargers, you might be singing a different tune there, but I don't think we're ever going to see that happen once again. And it's actually a bit easier to run on the Raiders than it is to throw on them, but I still think Mahomes and Chiefs stacks are going to be in play. And the Eagles are going to be popular, so you should be able to get them a little bit lower owned, and everyone's going to want to play that Baltimore-San Francisco game, so I think this is a nice GPP spot for Patrick Mahomes. And Lamar Jackson, I do like, because I want pieces of this game, but it's definitely a pretty tough draw versus the 49ers defense, allowing the 50 points per game to the position. It's also a 20.5 implied team total, which is the lowest of all these players we have talked about. I do love the rushing upside. He always has that 60-plus 100-yard game on the ground. It's always in the cards. And he has the rushing touchdown upside. You have Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Isaiah Likely, weapons to get the ball to. But for me personally, I would prefer Brock Purdy over Lamar, because I know the matchup is not great versus the Ravens, allowing the 3rd fewest points per game, but I just don't really think it's going to be easy for this Ravens defense to stop the Shanahan system that seems to work week in, week out. 26-point implied team total for the 49ers here. And on the season, Brock Purdy, while he doesn't have the name value, I still think DraftKings has him too cheap. We were playing him in the 5K range. He's now close to 7K. He really should be right there with Patrick Mahomes. He's just not there because of name value. But if you're looking at the numbers on the season, 270 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, nearly 10 yards per attempt, and a 70% completion percentage. George Kittle, CMC, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. There's just no stopping this offense. Seems like everyone's wide open for him whenever he drops back and gets in the ball, and they can make plays happen. So I just see no reason not to want to play Brock Purdy once again, like always. All right, so moving over to our build, like I always say, do not copy and paste these lineups that I post. I am simply just grabbing players from each position, putting them in a build that would make sense for a single entry / 3 max type build. Now, with this only being a 3-game slate, the rules do change a little bit. Like, I am fine with playing players against my own defense. I'm fine with sometimes triple, quadruple stacking and things like that. So it changes a little bit for a slate this small, but we have to get a quarterback here. For me, I like Brock Purdy. I like Jalen Hurts. I talk about Brock Purdy every single week, so it just gets a bit redundant. So we'll just go with Jalen Hurts here at $7,600. He's my number 1 projected quarterback. He's going to be very chalky as well. I'm sure everybody's in the same exact situation. But we'll just take our 2 tush pushes and we'll move on. Right, so moving on to running backs. Obviously, I'm going to have exposure to more than 3 running backs on this slate, especially if I'm playing 150. But my 3 favorite, just to save time here, so I'm not talking about every single play, Christian McCaffrey, Isaiah Pacheco, and DeAndre Swift. CMC, far and away better than everybody else at his position. It's not even close. The positional advantage you get with CMC every single time you roster him is always going to be extreme on a median basis. Obviously projected higher than just about everybody else by a large margin. And while this is not a great matchup versus the Ravens, he's still in a 5.5 point favorite at home, 26 point implied team total, 46.5 over under. He averages 22 opportunities per game, 4.5 of those being targets, 17.5 being carries, close to 100 rushing yards, 40 receiving yards, and over 5 yards per carry. The system is too good. The team is too good. There's too many offensive weapons to be worried about for the defense to really key in on just one. And CMC can beat you on the ground. He can beat you through the air. So, again, don't really care about the matchup being a little bit tough. 6 fewest points in the position, 18% target share for CMC. Just keep playing him. He should be 10K. I'm not sure why he's not. So, as long as he's not 10K, you're pretty much getting a decent value based off the projection. For me, I have him right around 24 points this week, which is lower than last week. I had him in the 26, 27 range, but he's still a great play nonetheless. Isaiah Pacheco missed the past couple of weeks due to injury. He's going to be back this week. I do have my concerns with him maybe not being in a complete massive role like he was the previous 2 weeks when we saw Jerick McKinnon out, because McKinnon's played well. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had a good game versus the Patriots, so maybe it's going to be a bit of a three-headed monster since it's his first game back. But if we assume just pretty much his normal role, where we're getting 14, 15 carries with a couple of targets, averaging close to 18 opportunities per game, that's still fine at $6,400 with them being a 10-point favorite at home versus the Raiders. He had a big game versus them a few weeks ago. They're currently 23rd versus running backs, so I do like Pacheco here quite a bit. This is a good game script for him. Then DeAndre Swift of the Philadelphia Eagles. The touchdown upside is obviously very low because if they get inside the 5-yard line, that's Jalen Hurts' time. But we know DeAndre Swift, he's been a pretty efficient back this season, 4.6 yards per carry. He can be involved in the passing game. The only problem is Jalen Hurts doesn't really check down a ton. But he's 11.5 point favorite at home running back with a 27 point implied team total plus matchup versus the Giants, who are allowing over 110 rushing yards per game. They're currently 22nd versus back. So you're going to see CMC and DeAndre Swift, that combo, be very popular on this slate. There's definitely a reason for it because value-wise, they're projecting the best. Moving over to our build here, like I said, CMC DeAndre Swift is going to be a very popular way to go. And since I have Jalen Hurts, I'm not saying you can't play Swift with Jalen Hurts, but just for the sake of this build to get a little bit different, let's play Pacheco instead. It's a few $100 difference. At the end, if I need those few $100, we'll just switch right back to DeAndre Swift. It's not a big deal. Let's go the Pacheco route just to get slightly less ownership. Heading back over to our build here, I don't think I can afford AJ Brown at this point because we have an expensive quarterback, we have an expensive running back, and normally I would say I'm prioritizing stacking instead of getting CMC in, but with this being a small slate and his positional advantage at running back, I am willing to probably shy away from AJ Brown for this specific build. I'm not saying not play AJ Brown in this slate, I'm just saying for this build specifically, I'm not going to have him. So we're going to have to play Devontae Smith because the ball's going to go somewhere, and then we'll just kind of cheat here and put Dallas Goedert in before we talk about tight ends. And then we're going to try to find a run back option in that game. We could honestly play two, to try to open things up. I think Wan'Dale Robinson will be the one I prefer. Darius Slayton has that high ceiling. 8 targets last week versus the Saints. 10.3 points if you're looking at Wan'Dale Robinson. He had 4 targets in the game, only 6.5 points. He seems a bit safer. Had a decent game versus Green Bay where he had 7 targets and was actually used on the field a little bit more. Let's plug him in at $3,900. It leaves us $3,600 left remaining for 3 spots. Keep in mind we can play a really cheap defense just to make things fit, hopefully. Go what the defensive pricing is. So we're not going to have a much room to work with, but if we plug in like a cheap Darius Slayton just to do the full-on stack here, that leaves us $3,700, and then we'll revisit once we talk tight ends and defense. And a lot of what I said with the wide receiver position can be applied here because a lot of it's going to be stacking related. Like if I have Lamar, I'm probably playing likely, or I'm using George Kittle as the run back option. If I have George Kittle, I probably have Brock Purdy at quarterback. Jalen Hurts goes with Dallas Goedert. Darren Waller is a run back option for an Eagle stack, which could be a little bit different because if you happen to put Darren Waller in instead of Dallas Goedert as the run back option, that could work out as well. Then Travis Kelce, if you're playing Patrick Mahomes, that's probably the only way I'm getting to him because he is expensive. And I'd rather allocate my funds to guys like AJ Brown, one of the 49ers wide receivers, or Christian McCaffrey on this slate rather than paying up for Travis Kelce. And defense is on such a small slate like this, I really just don't care which one you play. Whatever fits works. Point per dollar wise, the Raiders are actually looking the best on DraftKings for me. I got them at 3.3x with 7.5 projection. And we also have the Ravens is actually kind of low at 6.8, but they are cheap. Second best value on the slate for me. I mean, they're playing the 49ers, so I get it. But they're only $2,300, and this is one of the better defenses in football. And we've seen Brock Purdy be human before. We saw it versus the Browns game, so I don't think we can rule out the Ravens defense. And for my specific build, I really only have one player, so it might not be the worst call in the world. I don't like the Giants. The Chiefs would be my number one option, but they are a bit expensive, so it just really depends on what you can fit. But it looks like for me, Chiefs, Ravens, and Raiders will be the ones that pop up the most. All right, so let's finish this lineup off. We have just under $4,000 left for the 2 remaining spots. There's two ways we can go. If we wanted to play the Chiefs defense at $3,200, be a nice pairing option with Pacheco. It leaves you at 42, which I know there's no running backs available at that price point. So I think the first guy's up at wide receiver. Looking at Jennings, Watson, Tucker, which I don't really feel comfortable with any of those guys. Tucker did have that random explosion game versus the Chargers, but that'll probably never happen again. Double tight ends always viable in small sleds like this. Isaiah Likely wouldn't be terrible because I have no Ravens exposure. So maybe throwing Isaiah Likely in there wouldn't be a bad looking build. You have Jalen Hurts paired with Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, ran back with Robinson and Slayton because they're absolutely free and great matchups. CMC and Pacheco, and paired with Chiefs defense. Honestly, not a terrible looking build. If you happen to go the Ravens route, $5,000. I think we already established that there's probably not many running backs you would want to pick from. So we're either looking at wide receiver or tight end. Wide receivers that pop up, Odell. So it's kind of a very similar build there. I just think you're getting an upgrade at defense, but the projection on both Odell and Likely is honestly not too far off. So I think I'd rather just go the Chiefs route and Isaiah Likely there. And I don't think that build looks too bad. Like I said in the beginning, just run the optimizer here to see who's popping right now. This slate's for Monday. It is Friday. I have to visit Ohio, so I'm going to be traveling. Can't record there. So very early. So projections obviously might change. If I miss any big breaking news, well, I apologize. I just can't be in two places at once. Let's look at some of the builds here and what players are popping the most right now. We have Dallas Goedert, Jalen Hurts, Christian McCaffrey, Wan'Dale Robinson, DeAndre Swift, Darius Slayton as the 6 highest, which not really surprised about because it's jamming in those Eagles, which it does like versus the Giants, and then it's getting those run back options that are absolutely free in an elite matchup in Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton. The Raiders defense, a little bit more than what I was expecting there. Now keep in mind, I am using randomness, so these are not the exact projections. If I just ran it raw, it would obviously be a little bit different. Say Flowers, Rashee Rice, I do like Rice a lot. Travis Kelce's still popping a bunch. Brandon Ayuk. The 49ers aren't showing up besides CMC as much as I may have expected, but I'm assuming that's just because there's so much Jalen Hurts. If it's requiring stacking options, obviously you just can't really afford like a Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk alongside Jalen Hurts with like a Devontae Smith, AJ Brown, or something like that. Looking at the teams, Philly the most, Giants just because they're cheap, Chiefs, and yeah. So if you lowered your Philly exposure, obviously that's when that San Francisco and Baltimore exposure would end up going a little bit higher. Obviously, all a ton, but no real surprises here. But when you look at some of the reasons why players aren't popping as much, you can kind of explain it, which is a good understanding to have. But with that being said, I wish you all the best of luck this week. Merry Christmas. Have a fantastic time with your family, friends, whatever you do to celebrate the holidays. Wish you all the best of luck, and I'll see you all next time.